Tonight, June 30th, 2015, we will be witnessing another of the leap seconds. So today, let's talk about time and how complicated it is to keep track of time, to synchronize it with nature. So first of all, we have to talk about our current time system, how we used to keep track of it since the ancient times. We base it on days, months and years. So let's imagine this is our kind of solar system. This is the sun, this football is the sun, this is the earth, and this is the moon. Nothing to scale, nothing to the right color. So when the earth rotates around itself once, that's what we call a day. When the moon orbits around the earth once is what a month is. And when the earth orbits around the moon once, that gives you a year. Now the Babylonians figured out that it would take 30 earth rotations, or a day, to allow the moon to orbit around the earth once, the month. So they decided that a month would have 30 days. But it wasn't quite 30 days, that was the problem. Because the moon doesn't actually take 30 days to orbit around the earth, it takes 29.5 days. So what they decided to do is that each month, some months would have 29 days, while some months would have 30 days. But then there was another problem, because 12 months, that's not 365 days. So every few years, to kind of cancel out the effect, to make sure the earth kind of comes back rotation every year, is that some year they decide to add an extra month. And then the Egyptians eventually adopted this system, and then instead made a year defined as 365 days. But the Egyptians still had a slight problem, because the earth didn't actually take 365 days to go around the sun. It takes 365.25 of a day. So what the Egyptians decided to do is added leap years, so that every 4 years these quarter days will gather up and turn into a full day, where we add it into the year to make that year 366 days instead. This system was then eventually used also by the Romans, where they eventually came up with all the month names and all the other stuff. But then it took about 1,600 years until they realized that adding a day every 4 years is a bit too much, because the earth doesn't actually spin, takes 365.25 of a day to rotate around the sun. It takes just slightly less, which means they have been adding too many days in for the past 1,000-ish years. So Pope Gregory XIII in 1582 had to deal with these two problems, both the problem of having added too many days in the past, and to make sure they don't add too many days in the future. So they came up with a new rule that if the year is divisible by 100, that's not a leap year. But if it's divisible by 400, it is a leap year. So 2000 is a leap year, 2100 is not, 2200 is not, 2300 is not, 2400 is, and so on, so on, so on. And then the second problem was the too many days they had been adding. So what they decided to do in 1582 is to just literally skip about 10 days. So they went from April the 1st to April the 12th. Now, I don't know, people probably thought it was like an April Fool's prank at first when they said we're going to skip 10 days, but eventually it wasn't. And that's how they caught up with the current time, the new time. The Romans did it, and most countries had Catholic did it, but the British didn't do it until about 200 years later in 1752. And they still were using the old way every 4 years, no fancy rules. So in the end, in 1752, they had to skip 12 days, from September the 2nd to September the 14th. And also that same year was the year that they changed their new year from March the 25th to January the 1st. But enough talking about leap years, now let's talk about leap seconds. Why do we have leap seconds? Well, the Earth is actually rotating slower and slower every day because of gravitational interactions with the moon. So that means the Earth is getting off sync from the atomic time. What this means is that a solar day is actually longer and longer than 24 hours, or at least what we define to be 24 hours, or 86,400 seconds. So what they decided to do since 1972, they decided to add what we call leap seconds into our day so that the Earth can catch up with the atomic clock. Now when they add these leap seconds, they always add it at the same two periods. There's 2 periods in a year that they would add it. They would either add it right before July the 1st, so in June the 30th, which is kind of today. And the other one is they would add right before New Year in December the 31st, the moment right before New Year. So they would go 11:59:59, they would go 11:59:60, and then they would start the new day at 00:000. Since 1972, we have added 25 leap seconds. So since then, we have, added an extra 25 seconds to our lives. And the latest one was added on June 30th, 2012, 3 years ago. And the next one to be added, the 26th one, will be obviously today. But it's not just about randomly adding seconds in and then nothing happens, because there are actually problems caused with adding extra seconds in. It's similar to computer bugs. It's, well, not quite Y2K. Computers and programs, some of them will have to show the time of 23:59:60. And that causes problems on many computers that run Unix program, which is kind of like the program for timing on computer. For example, back in 2012, the last time we added leap seconds, this caused about 400 flight delays in Australia because of the little time error, which meant check-ins had to actually be done by hand, like back in the old days. And also it caused some sites to crash, like Reddit. This actually caused what we call the International Telecommunication Union to come up with an idea, to come up with a proposal to cancel these leap seconds, to stop adding leap seconds and just use what inaccuracy we have. And it's still debated. So yeah, guys, that's my video on about the complications of us trying to keep track with time. And yeah, I hope you enjoy the rest of your time, and thank you very much. Enjoy your extra second of your life, and I'll see you again soon. Goodbye.